Welcome to Energy Vista, a podcast on energy issues where we make experts great again and contribute actively to the public debate on policymaking around commodities, the geopolitics of energy, and trade. I'm your host, Leslie Palti-Guzman. It's March 12, 2026, and time for a new Energy Vista episode. Today, my guest is Dr. Amit Mor. He is CEO of EcoEnergy, a strategic consultancy, and a senior lecturer at Reichman University in Israel. We're going to discuss a very timely topic around Israel's energy security, regional energy cooperation, war infrastructure risks, the Strait of Hormuz closure, and long-term outlook for oil and gas investments in the region. Hi, Amit.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for making it happen. I know it's very intense right now in Israel. You're receiving a lot of missiles, rockets from the north, from Hezbollah, missiles from Iran. We're into the 13 days of the war. So thank you for making it happen. And I know we may get disconnected in the event of sirens, but safety first. So following the preventive attacks from Israel and the US on Iran against Iran on February 28th, we've seen that critical energy infrastructures have been hit in the region. And last summer, when there was already a war between Israel and Iran, and then the US joined also to remove the threat of nuclear facilities from Iran. There was the Leviathan gas field that shut down out of precaution. This time, also it happens. The Leviathan gas field shut down. I believe Karish also. And can you tell us right now how is Israel handling its energy security during a time of war?
Yes. So, as you said correctly, Leslie, it's very important to understand that 75% of the electricity these days in Israel is generated from natural gas, which is being generated in three and produced in three fields offshore Israel. That's a Leviathan gas field, a very large gas field, the largest in the Mediterranean, which most of its gas is exported to Egypt and Jordan. The Karish field, the smaller Karish field, which all its gas is domestically consumed, and the Tamar field, which produces gas both for domestic consumption and for export to, especially to Egypt. So, for precautionary reasons, as in the 12 days war last June, the government Ministry of Defense ordered Chevron, which is the operator of Leviathan, and Energean, the Greek-British company, which is the operator of Karish, to shut down the production platforms.
And this is out of precaution in the event the field would be hit by a missile.
Exactly. The Karish platform, it's an FPSO, floating production, storage, and offload vessel anchored 80 kilometers offshore in the Mediterranean. And the Leviathan platform is located 10 kilometers offshore Middle East, between Tel Aviv and Haifa. And the reason for shutdown of those two production facilities is to protect both the employees, more than 100 employees, which is working on the FPSO of Energean and the platform of Chevron, and also in a way to protect the platforms themselves, because once a missile hit a platform while it is treating natural gas, the damage might be much greater than if a missile hits a platform while it is not operating, and such a damage can be either from total loss, which is years to rebuild, and billions of dollars to partial loss. So that's the reason why the government, for the third time, in fact, order shutdown of platforms. First time was in 2.5 years ago when the war began in Gaza. Then the Tamar platform, which is close to Gaza, southern Israel, was shut down for about a month. So basically, Israel does not suffer from a lack of electricity and no shortage of electricity because first, the coal plants, Israel has two coal plants. Until 20 years ago, they produced 80% of the electricity in Israel. These
And
days,
I think those coal plants were supposed to be closed actually,
they are,
um,
they are
but
under yes, they are converted to gas.
it's even better for security of supply to have this
Exactly.
diversification.
They are now dual fueled. At least the plant in Ashkelon and the plant in Hadera is in a process of conversion to gas, and they maintain dual fuel exactly for such energy security reasons for such a time. And those plants are working full capacity on coal these days. And also, all the gas turbines, the combined cycle gas turbines, are working either on gas from Tamar when available, and also on a backup fuel, which is diesel, gas oil, diesel. This is a backup fuel, and since the past, this is the 13th day of the war, already more than 100,000 tons of diesel was burned in these power plants to produce electricity. So Israel maintains strategic reserves of diesel, gas oil, for emergency cases to back up natural gas exactly for such occurrences. So
And I guess that people are using. I mean, they are more at home, but they are using less their car, or they are changing their kind of consumption of electricity and energy during wartime.
yeah, so I would say first we are already in the spring in Israel, so it's not peak demand times for electricity. Secondly, most of the populations are at home. So I think generally the consumption of electricity is lower than usual. So Israel, in this respect, is well prepared. Of course, no one can guarantee, and the IDF, which intercept, I think we'll get a statistic later on, 90 or 95% of the missiles. Also, in the last war, no strategic energy facility like power plant was damaged, except the oil refinery, the larger oil refinery in Israel, in Haifa. It was damaged in the former war and went out of order for a couple of months. Now it is
And
producing.
of course, there is a war of disinformation going on too. I think I read somewhere that maybe this time also it was hit, the Haifa refinery.
No, it was not here this time. It is producing jet fuel, this is kerosene for the Air Force, diesel, and so on. It is working in emergency conditions because it is close to the northern border with Lebanon. So Israel is well supplied these days. Also, imports of distillates and crude is more problematic because international marine transportation is limited. But I believe that if we need for another few weeks to rely on the production of the local refineries and reserves, we are fine. The party which is suffer the most is Jordan, because Jordan imports gas from the Leviathan field, which is shut down, and again about 75% of the electricity in Jordan is based on gas from Israel, from the Leviathan field. So we already evident major power shortage in Amman and in Jordan. Also, it should be noted that 15% of the gas consumption in Egypt is being imported from Israel, from the Leviathan field, and also from the Tamar field. So also Egypt needs to divert gas from industry to power generation. So what we know, and We learned that also in the last war with Iran in last June, is that with a dependency or being a major supplier, regional supplier, in this case of natural gas, comes responsibility. That is, the energy planner or the government of Israel doesn't need to look only on the supply of gas or alternative fuel, electricity to the Israeli public. We need also to think about, especially the Jordanians. The
So
Egyptians.
it's it's interesting because when you look at what's happening for Qatar, for example, which is a large supplier globally, they decided to declare force majeure, and then as a result, some of their customers, like Shell, also declared uh, force majeure for their end users. It didn't happen, I guess, from Chevron or from the Israeli companies involved in the gas field, correct?
Well, there is a clause of force majeure, and that's the reason which allows Israel not to, or the supplier, Chevron, it's not Israel, these are the private companies, Chevron, in the case of Leviathan and Tamar and their partners, they are the suppliers. So there is a force majeure clause, but in addition to I think, it's my thinking, that with this dependency, which is was established of Jordan and Egypt, comes responsibility of Israel. Now we have to monitor very, very quick, very, very closely the power cuts in Amman and in Jordan, because once you have long-term power shortage, it can and it in other places in the world creates civil unrest, demonstration against the regime, and if this war continues, which I don't think it will, we can discuss it. I think the war is close to its end. Mr. Trump is close to declare victory and so on. Let's discuss it in a few minutes. But if the war continues, so just to maintain the regime, the Hashemite kingdomship in Jordan, and not to allow civil unrest and protest against the government, Israel might need to divert some quantities of gas to Jordan to allow some supply of gas and generation of
Some relief.
electricity,
Yeah.
just to maintain the stability of the regime.
Yeah.
And nobody
What
thought about
about
it here, but now it is. It might happen, so we'll need to burn more backup fuel, and even to maintain some, rolling over 1 or 2 hours of power cuts to some neighbors in Israel to allow supply of gas.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, this solidarity is very interesting, this cooperation. I think last summer, Israel was also able to send extra solar electricity that they produce to Jordan, correct?
So not exactly, it was the same problem, but again, we are the 12 days to 13 days. If the week continues for another week, so at least I suggested to the Israeli government a plan B in the form that you just presented, that we'll need to supply Jordan, because Jordan is at 75% this period relying on gas for power generation, and they have 25% renewable energy, especially solar and wind. So less solar in this period than in the summer because of the solar radiation, more wind, and they don't have reserves of gas oil as a backup fuel like in Israel.
So
So
actually, Amit, you've been thinking about ways to improve Israel's energy security, but also regional cooperation with its neighbors. And I saw that you wrote about an idea, which is to create strategic petroleum reserves. We've seen that the International Energy Agency and the G7 just agreed on putting together major release of their strategic petroleum reserves, with the US contributing the most. How do you think such a thing could work? And I don't know if you're thinking about cooperation between Israel, Jordan, and Egypt.
not necessarily a regional SPR, strategic petroleum reserves, but each country, especially Jordan and Egypt, and this is very costly to hold those reserves. And poor countries like Jordan and Egypt, usually the last thing they invest in is strategic reserves of petroleum and derivatives. But for Israel, for example, and for many other nations, this is a must. Second, very important lessons that we learned since the war in Ukraine and the wars in the Middle East in the past 2.5 years in Israel and Iran, that Israel needs, also Jordan and Egypt, what we call strategic and operational reserves, onshore storage reserve of natural gas, like in America, like in Russia, Europe, Japan,
But does I mean Israel is such a small country. Do you have the geology?
yes. So the Geological Institute made a survey, located several places in Israel where the underground aquifers, and also we have what we call the a salt rock near the Dead Sea, its dome, so in salt caverns, and so on and so forth. So this is a must, for a country which relies 70%, 75% will go up to 80% until generation on based on gas, and that's for decades to come. Even we don't have our own reserves of gas, we'll continue to import gas probably in 20, 25 years. So this is a must. That's a very more relevant lesson, an important lesson. And the last most important lessons, all the world we are learning, is that distributed electricity sources, that is renewable energy sources, like wind, solar, geothermal, hydro, and in Israeli case, it's almost all about solar energy because the wind potential is very low. This is energy security, which is national security. Distributed energy, you have thousands and thousands of small and large production sources like panels, solar panels, PV, photovoltaic panels with energy storage, batteries storage in small scale at household, or in very large scale like storage farms, lithium ion batteries, and in the future it will be sodium ion and other materials. So this is so important. Renewable energy, not just only for environmental reasons, but also to enhance energy security.
Yeah,
And in
for
this
strategic autonomy. Yeah.
Exactly. And here we should learn from the Gazans, the people of Gaza before the war, 6th of October, and I ran the calculation, got all the information. 55% of their electricity was generated from solar panels, and even a few cheese caps and so on and so forth, plus batteries. So they don't have um, even auto batteries, which are $100 per battery and not so expensive like lithium ion batteries. So they have an array of 4 or 5 batteries plus a solar panel on the rooftop. So they have enough electricity for the refrigerator, for lighting, and for their solar mobile phones. So this is a most important lesson for all the world, and that's the direction in which the world is going.
Yeah, very interesting. And is it realistic to talk about small scale nuclear reactors for power generation in Israel? I heard that some tech companies that are implanted in Israel, Google, and other, are thinking ahead of time with the growth of electricity demand potentially because of data centers and AI. Do you think it's even realistic? I mean, I see it as potentially also a strategic risk, because it's nuclear and it can be, there could be strike on
Exactly.
those
So
facilities.
you are on the nose in this respect. We are a great promoter of nuclear energy in Israel. The problem is both large scale nuclear plants and also SMR, small modular reactors, which is on the verge of becoming in the world financially available. The technology is developing, as you know very well now. So we're looking for many years very intensely on that. The problem of Israel is since Israel, for known reason, is not a signatory on the NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty. So it is not, Israel cannot purchase technology. That is, Israel cannot purchase atomic plant technology from any country. That's one of the rules of the game. Any country which is allowed to purchase has to sign the non-proliferation treaty. So I approached Prime Minister Netanyahu several times already. Now that we have a good friend at the White House, Mr. Trump, uh, I suggest that Israel approach Mr. Trump, the American administration, and since there is a precedent that President Bush, the son, about 25 years ago, enabled India to purchase nuclear power plants technology from Westinghouse, American companies, regardless of the fact that they are not signatory to the NPT. So since there is such a precedent, so Mr. Trump, American administration, possibly can allow Israel to purchase American technology to implement it here, because otherwise we cannot, Israel cannot develop. There are some startups which are working on SMRs, and even more, there is a major, fantastic startup, Antitar, which is working and is very close to develop small-scale fusion technology. A small scale, about 20 megawatts, a small power plant of a fusion technology, hopefully in 4 or 5 years. So here it's going to be an Israeli technology. I don't think we'll have a problem to implement it, but still we'll need to see that it will be commercialized. That's a holy grail of the energy and the power. Hopefully in the future we'll have.
Actually, can you tell us, because I mean, Israel has been those has not have not been normal years, like since 2023 because of the war. So does the electricity demand in Israel is growing, or how is the electricity demand, like the growth, like the outlook for electricity demand in Israel?
The electricity demand is growing very high growth rate of about 3%, going to increase to 4% annual demand, especially as you mentioned with AI, with data centers. Now, many international companies and domestic entrepreneurs are, developing data centers in Israel for several reasons. First, the electricity is very, very cheap, among the cheapest in the world, in Israel, in the Western world, even cheaper than most of the states in America, because we have very cheap gas. And since most of the electricity is produced from gas, natural gas, so we have cheap electricity. So international companies like Google and others, NVIDIA, and they wish to develop what you call data centers here. Now, data center is it's a real estate, and especially full of servers, and it needs huge amounts of electricity, like just to generate a medium-sized data centers. It's like to supply electricity for a town of about 100,000 people. So basically, I urge the Israeli government to think again about that, because basically what we are doing, we are exporting very cheap electricity. We are depleting our natural gas reserves much quicker to supply the world with data center services. Of course, we need data services for our own needs, for the government, for the defense industry, for the high-tech industry, for the academia, and so on, R&D, and so on and so forth. But Israel does not need to basically export cheap electricity and deplete its own natural gas resources, or devote renewable energy resources just to satisfy the international demand for data centers.
And
So
actually, it's a very controversial debate in Israel, like how to use the reserves, domestic market versus export market, the price at home of electricity. It's very heated as a debate.
exactly. So basically, Israel is producing about 28, will increase to about 30 BCMs per annum. About half of that is consumed locally, and the rest is exported. And in 4 years' time, when the second phase of Leviathan is going to be completed, we are going to produce about 40 BCM per annum and export two-thirds of that. Now, the reserves of Israel is about 1,000 BCM proven reserves, and likelihood of additional large discoveries is doubtful, probably limited. Most of geologists and geophysicists claim that the largest gas reserves were already found. So in 20 years' time, and even before, we are going to deplete our natural gas 20, 25 years, but we'll start, unless we'll have major discoveries, Israel will need to start importing gas, I think, by 2035 to 2037. So the government authorized a huge $35 billion gas export deal from Leviathan to Egypt just 2 months ago, and it's for about 110 BCM, and I believe that's the last large export deal that Israel will do with its
Okay.
neighbors.
Very interesting. So let's move to the halt of transit through the Strait of Hormuz. So very few tankers right now are going through. Some are being hit. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright in the U.S. announced today actually that U.S. naval escort could start at the end of the month, so in a little bit more than 2 weeks from now. Um, what do you think about this signal in terms of pressure that it puts on oil prices and domestic opinion in the Gulf, in the East Med, and in the US specifically? I think you mentioned that the fate of the war is determined by the price of the American pump. At the same time, all the comments from President Trump are going into the direction of, we don't want to do half job, we want to finish this war, and we want to make sure Iran is no longer a threat.
Yes, indeed. I stress and believe that the price of the barrel will bring a close end to this war because of the pressure and I would say, in many respects, the anger of the American public. As you know very well, and I lived many years in the United States, people are very sensitive to the price of gasoline at the pump. And more,
Especially during a midterm season, like for the next
exactly.
election.
And the midterm elections are in 6, 7 months' time. And when the price before the war, just 12 days, 13 days ago, was about average in America, $2.50 per gallon, and now it's close to $4 per gallon. And price of, just check the Brent or WTI, is close to $100 already. On Monday it was an incredible, phenomenal, unprecedented day in which prices increased from $83 last Friday, opening of the mercantile exchanges. The trade of oil, it jumped to $115, and then with Mr. Trump's announcement in the afternoon that the war is going to be over soon, it went down back to $85, and now it's close to $100 per barrel today. So
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think that the internal pressure, domestic pressure on Mr. Trump, and he's very, very sensitive to the price of oil. So he can say only once, and he utilized this his tool to announce that the war is going to be over soon. Second tool means is indeed, as you mentioned, the upcoming release of about 400 million barrels from the strategic petroleum reserves of the U.S., $240 million barrels, and additional 160 million barrels from the other OECD, European, and other countries in the next few months, few weeks, to compensate for the lost about 20 million barrels per day, about 20% of the world consumption, which is stuck in the Gulf in the Strait of Hormuz. So I think that Mr. Trump will end the war soon, possibly in a week time, especially because of this economic reason, and we start to see inflationary pressures building up in America and elsewhere. Calls to halt the reduction in the interest rates or increase in interest rate, and the fear from basically inflation plus which is stagnation, economic stagnation.
But
So,
I mean, wouldn't it make Iran a winner in a way, because they are using the Strait of Hormuz to inflict this economic and psychological damage, right, to the US and the rest of the world. They are doing it on purpose, hitting the tankers. So wouldn't it make them stronger with their ability to restrain flow around the Strait of Hormuz?
well, that's as you say correctly. That's a major weapon. In addition to striking missiles and all the surrounding neighbors, including infrastructure, oil infrastructure, gas infrastructure, LNG in Qatar, even water desalination plants, and so on and so forth. The fact that they are controlling the Strait of Hormuz, that the oil tankers which that are passing are Iranian oil tankers which are supplying oil
China.
to China, especially, and they continue to pass through the Hormuz Strait. So that's a major, I would say, achievement of the Iranian, and the fact that they
I see it as a major problem for the West, because it's a lack of deterrence, and it would be the second major strategic maritime corridor that anti-Western rogue state countries like Iran, Russia, Venezuela used to use. Like, so we have the Strait of Hormuz, but we have also the Red Sea, right, which have basically evicted Western assets, naval assets, and commercial shipments, and all contributing to China, basically benefiting China.
exactly,
So,
as you say, both Venezuela and Iran, Venezuela, okay, in the past already, since the change in regime there and takeover of the United States, in a way. So oil was diverted was sent, shipped to China and reduced prices, and also from Iran. And Iran, they continue. So in this respect, Iran, as was reported this morning, today, Iran increased significantly its export of oil from 1.5 million barrels per day to 2.1 million barrels per day to China, although in alleviated, of course, prices, but discounted prices. So unless the U.S. Army will manage to maintain safe passage of oil and LNG from the Gulf, right now there are about 200 tankers and ships which are waiting on two sides of the strait. The strait is
so
actually shut down.
So let me get it straight. Iran is able to increase its energy revenues on oil exports heading to China, and neither the US or Israel is targeting those tankers because there is crew members on it, but probably also because they don't want to antagonize China who needs this oil. But the IRGC is still in control of oil exports. And on the other side, the IRGC and their army are targeting Western tankers and cargoes. And they are not, and civilians, since they are attacking the crews at the same time, and they are using drones, and they are using unmanned, boats and mines potentially. So it looks like a very asymmetrical energy war game right now.
Absolutely. The United States and Israel de facto decided not to target Iranian oil and gas facilities. It is very easy, very, very easy to shut down the export of oil from Iran. Just target the island of Hajj. 90% of the export of oil is done through this island, which is located in the northwest part of the Persian Gulf. Um, but both the United States and Israel were thinking on Iran after the war. So, because if we damage the oil facilities, it's going to be a damage for a year time to go. And we are thinking about Iran for the future.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't think so, but if this war continues, maybe there's going to be a possibility just to hit some bottlenecks in the Harj Island, which will not sabotage or damage, cause total damage to their export ability, but just to enable a stoppage of their oil export. That would be enough. Because right now it's a paradox. They are holding the 20% of the oil and about 20% of the LNG to the world, and as well, and they continue to export oil, and in fact increasing their export
Yeah.
to China, which enjoys that fact.
Do you think China would have enough incentives to tell Iran, okay, stop it now? You need to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
The question is who can influence the current regime in Iran. So as we understand, Mujtaba, the son of Mujtaba Khamenei, is now in power. We didn't see him yet. He
We
just
only heard him today.
exactly he announced, he released an announcement. He is it's still a question mark. Is he going to be a pragmatic leader? Because I don't see a regime change soon, as many people thought that Israeli and American airplanes and attack can bring a regime change or enable the condition for the local population to rebel. I really doubt it would happen. So we'll need to continue most likely to live with this regime, which, as we understand, they are like a wounded lion right now. They didn't change their long-term perception and I think ambitions to gain nuclear weapon. Like North Korea, once they possess nuclear weapon, nobody could touch them, and I think they'll continue to have these ambitions as well as long as their 440 kilograms of enriched uranium is still there and was not captured, and as we understand, was not damaged in two locations, both in Natanz, which was hit by the Israelis and the Americans 8 months ago, but also in Isfahan, as the head of the AIEA announced. So as long as they have this enriched uranium, so I think if the war will end with this, so I believe that in a few months or few years time we'll need another operation,
Right.
because this fundamentalistic regime has a long vision. They a long time vision. They have. They don't see their objective is not a year or 2 years. It's decades to come, and unfortunately, I think that this war, as mentioned, is going to be over soon. Mr. Trump began the war. He will announce major victory. He and Netanyahu will announce major victory, and so and so, and we might need to go to another campaign in the future, unfortunately.
So you seem a bit pessimistic on the outcome of the war in terms of regime change, but do you still see potential opportunities regarding new energy alliances in the region or new energy corridors? How do you think the war is going to impact the regional trade flows?
Well, I think that first, this war puts most of the Gulf countries the same camp with Israel, with the United States and Israel. So I think that in
Yeah,
terms of regional,
maybe, but at the same time, they only took defensive approach so far, not offensive, and they are still hedging. I think to see who is coming next to head Iran. If it's
yeah,
coming from the IRGC, if something else, I think they're still hedging.
yeah, I agree with you. So I hope that Mr. Trump, after this war is over, will promote the IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe transportation channel, which this initiative was launched several years ago. The Biden administration, that is around the hauling of cargoes from Iran via ship to Saudi Arabia and the Emirates with trains to ports in the Mediterranean, Israel, possibly in Syria, to Europe, and also possibly in the future hydrogen pipeline, and possibly in the future production of green energy, that is solar energy and wind energy in Saudi, Jordan, Syria, and so on, with submarine electricity line of DC to Europe, and so on and so forth. So I truly hope that at least such an initiative, which is a long shot, it can take a decade or 2 decades, could emerge after the war with such a very good, excellent relations between Israel and India. And the Prime Minister of India just visited Israel 2 days before the war began, end of February. Mr. Modi, and I truly hope that such a regional cooperation, especially in renewable energy, in the future hydrogen production and transportation, could emerge. And for the Iranian people, well, I truly hope that if in the future there is a pragmatic leadership there, they have not only oil and gas, they have also a lot of minerals, rare minerals, rare metals. They can attract so many
Investments.
investments. They are such a skilled people, excellent academia, excellent research and development there, and so on and so forth. So it's such a loss, it's such a rich country in terms of human capital and, of course, of minerals, oil, gas, rare minerals, and so on and so forth, which are so needed, especially for the energy transition and electric transportation and so on, would be in such a miserable economic situation, because the economic crisis just intensified via this war. There is such a huge crisis, major devaluation of the currency, lack of
Water shortage,
water
electricity
shortage,
shortage.
electricity shortage, because so many $billions by this regime was diverted to wars and for nuclear and facilitating the proxies, Hezbollah and the Houthis and so on and so forth. So I hope that the next administration there will be more pragmatic and allow some economic development and put its mind to enhance and develop the Iranian economy and not to fight its neighbors.
Mm. Well, thank you so much, Amit. It was a very insightful conversation, and stay safe.
Thank you very much, Leslie.
This episode was recorded on March 12, 2026. This is Leslie Palti-Guzman saying good day and good luck. If you like what you hear, want to support Energy Vista, discuss sponsorship, or send feedback, contact me.